A starving woman tried to sneak away, but the Duke saw her little daughter staring at his plate. Before we begin this beautiful period romance story, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The wind pressed against the walls of Blackwood Manor with a low, steady moan, as if the winter itself wished to enter the grand hall and taste the warmth inside. Eliza Moore braced her shoulder against the kitchen door, pushing it open just enough to slip through. Her breath trembled in the air before her, a pale thread of fear and cold. She pressed one finger to her lips as she looked back at the small figure beside her. "Stay near me, Clara," she whispered. "Do not wander." Clara nodded, her thin face half hidden beneath wisps of fair hair. Her bare feet made no sound as she crossed the stone floor. The kitchen was dark, lit only by a dying ember in the corner hearth. Pots hung above their heads like silent witnesses, and the scent of roasted meat lingered in the air as a fading memory of abundance. Eliza's fingers shook as she reached for a small loaf left on the table. She hesitated, hearing her late husband's voice in her mind reminding her that good people do not steal. But hunger had long since swallowed pride, and the last time Clara had eaten anything warm was 3 days ago. Just a small piece, she thought, enough to help her sleep tonight. She tore off a corner of the loaf and tucked it into her coat. She reached for a second piece when she felt tug at her skirt. Clara pulled gently. "Mama." Eliza bent down quickly. "What is it?" Clara simply pointed toward the open doorway beyond the kitchen. A faint golden light seeped into the room, warm and inviting. It came from the grand dining hall. "No, sweetheart," Eliza murmured. "We must not go there. We take what we need and return quietly." But Clara's eyes stayed fixed on the light. Hunger gave her a stubborn courage she rarely possessed. She stepped forward. "Clara," Eliza whispered, catching her hand. "Please, listen to me." Yet something in Clara's expression made Eliza falter. The child's gaze held not boldness, but a simple yearning, the kind born from nights spent shivering and days spent pretending she was not hungry. Eliza felt her throat tighten. "All right," she said softly. "Only a quick look, but we say nothing, we touch nothing." She lifted Clara into her arms and approached the doorway. The hall opened before them like a world built for kings. A long table stretched across the room, covered with silver dishes and untouched food. Roasted duck, warm rolls, winter vegetables, and a thick soup sending slow ribbons of steam into the air. Eliza swallowed hard. Clara's breath caught. At the head of the table sat a solitary man. Duke Henry Ashford did not notice them at first. His dark hair fell slightly over his brow, and his eyes were lowered as he absent-mindedly cut a piece of meat he had no intention of eating. Candles flickered along the table, struggling to soften the rigid lines of his face. He looked less like a man enjoying supper and more like one enduring it. Eliza froze. Her heart slammed against her ribs. She stepped back, hoping to retreat before he saw them. But the wooden floor betrayed her with a sharp creak. Henry's knife paused, his head lifted slowly. Eliza felt the air disappear from her lungs. She turned Clara behind her instinctively, shielding her with both arms. "I'm so sorry, Your Grace," she whispered, struggling to form the words. "We're leaving, we meant no harm." But Henry did not look at her. His gaze had fallen on Clara. The child peered around Eliza's elbow, drawn by the warm scent of food. Her blue eyes widened as she stared at the feast before her, eyes that held exhaustion so deep it seemed older than the child herself. Henry sat perfectly still, as if time had halted in the room. The glow of the candles caught the outline of Clara's small face, revealing how thin she had grown, how pale, how fragile. The sight struck him with unexpected force. "How long has she been hungry?" he asked quietly. Eliza's lips trembled. "She's fine, Your Grace." Clara shifted, almost embarrassed to be looked at directly. Henry rose from his chair. "She is not fine." His voice held no accusation, only a weight of concern that made Eliza's eyes sting. "We'll go," she insisted. "Please let us leave in peace." Henry shook his head. "You will not walk back into the cold tonight." Eliza's instinct was to argue, but Clara leaned her head against her sleeve, exhausted beyond her years. Eliza hesitated, torn between shame and need. "Sit," Henry said gently. "Both of you." Eliza looked up, stunned. "Your Grace." "Sit," He gestured to the seats closest to him. A man in his position did not make requests. He made commands. But this command, strangely, held no threat. Eliza obeyed. Clara climbed onto the chair with difficulty, her legs barely strong enough to lift her. Eliza placed her hands in her lap, afraid to touch anything unless permission was given. Henry lifted his hand toward the doorway. "Mrs. Greaves." The housekeeper appeared instantly, her posture stiff with indignation the moment she saw Eliza. Her eyes flicked over the widow's worn shawl, the child's ragged dress, and she drew herself taller. "Yes, Your Grace." "Bring a tray," he said. "A proper one." Mrs. Greaves blinked. "Your Grace, surely—" "A proper one," he repeated without raising his voice. The housekeeper pursed her lips and left. Eliza's cheeks burned. "We're not deserving of such." Henry met her gaze. "This is not about deserving. It is about necessity." Eliza could not respond. Her throat felt too tight to allow words. Clara watched him cautiously. After a long moment she whispered, "Thank you." Henry's expression softened. He sat again, though he did not continue eating. His attention remained on the child. "You live in the village?" he asked. "Yes," Eliza said. "Your husband? Gone these 2 years." Henry nodded slowly, as if piecing something together. "And no family to assist you?" "None close enough to matter." Before Henry could ask more, Mrs. Greaves returned, carrying a tray heavy with warm food. She set it before Clara, with a stiffness that betrayed her disapproval. Clara stared at the meal, as if afraid it might vanish. Eliza gave a small nod. Only then did Clara begin to eat. Slowly at first, then with increasing urgency. Henry watched, quietly grateful she no longer looked at his plate. Eliza lowered her gaze, unable to endure the weight of her gratitude. "This kindness, I don't know how to repay it." "Kindness," he murmured. "An unusual word for a duke, I suppose." "Not unusual," Eliza whispered. "Just unexpected." He allowed a faint smile. "Unexpected for me as well." Clara paused long enough to lift her head. "Is all this food yours?" Henry glanced at the table. "Officially, yes." "Do you eat it all?" He hesitated. "Rarely." Clara blinked, confused. "Then why is it here?" Henry's shoulders lowered, as if the question touched something inside him. Habit, I suppose, and expectation. Clara considered this as she returned to her meal. "Mamma says expectation can be a heavy thing." Henry's eyes lifted to Eliza, gentle but probing. "Does she?" Eliza forced a small smile. "Children hear more than we think." Henry leaned back slightly. "Indeed they do." For a moment, silence rested between them, not uncomfortable but fragile, like something forming slowly. Mrs. Greaves lingered near the doorway, watching with the tension of someone waiting for impropriety to reveal itself. When Henry noticed her stare, he dismissed her with a small gesture. She left reluctantly. Eliza exhaled, grateful for her departure. "You have angered her," Eliza murmured. "I often do," Henry replied. "She believes her duty is to preserve order, and you break order by feeding us." "Apparently." Eliza's lips curved, though only faintly. "Your servants might think me bold for stepping foot in this room." Henry shook his head. "They may think what they wish. It changes nothing." "But it reflects poorly on you," she said. "A duke seen offering charity to a stranger," he interrupted gently. "A man offering food to a hungry child." She looked at him then, not as a duke, not as a benefactor, but as a man whose kindness revealed an unexpected vulnerability. The sight unsettled her. She lowered her eyes. Clara continued eating until the plate was nearly empty. Her eyelids drooped. She leaned against her mother's arm, warm and full for the first time in weeks. "We should go," Eliza said quietly. "You have already done too much." Henry did not answer immediately. His eyes lingered on Clara's sleeping form, softening again in that strange way Eliza could not decipher. Finally he spoke. "Allow her to rest a while. The cold outside is severe." "We can manage," Eliza insisted. "You should not have to. It is our life, Your Grace. It does not have to remain so." She stared at him, startled by the note in his voice. "What are you implying?" "That circumstances can be altered." "And who would alter them?" she asked. "You?" He held her gaze. "If you allow it." Eliza's hands tightened around Clara. "We cannot accept more than a meal. We must preserve what little dignity we have left." Henry leaned forward. Dignity does not vanish with need. You speak as if you have never known need, she whispered. He paused. Something in his expression shifted, darkened, then steadied. Everyone has known it in some form. Their eyes met in a quiet exchange that lasted only a breath. But in that breath, something unspoken passed between them. An understanding, fragile but unmistakable. Eliza broke the moment first. "We will leave now." She lifted Clara into her arms. Henry rose but said nothing. He watched as Eliza carried the sleeping child toward the door. Only when she reached the threshold did he speak again. "What is your maiden name, Mrs. Moore?" Eliza paused, puzzled by the question. She turned slightly. "Turner. Eliza Turner." Henry froze. The color drained from his face. His gaze sharpened, filled suddenly with recognition. Recognition that held the weight of memory and something far more unsettling. Eliza frowned. "Your Grace." "What is it?" Henry stared at her, unable to disguise the shock tightening his features. He had seen that face before, long ago, and the memory hit him like a ghost rising. Eliza did not understand the look on the Duke's face, only that it unsettled her more than the cold beyond the manor walls. She held Clara closer, her pulse thudding as if the room itself had begun to tilt. Henry did not speak at first. He seemed caught between past and present, standing so still the candles around them flickered as if disturbed by his silence. "Your Grace," she repeated, her voice uncertain. Henry blinked, drawing himself back to the moment. "Forgive me. Your name." "It surprised me. Many people share the name Turner," Eliza said quietly. "I doubt it means anything." He hesitated. "Perhaps not." But the look in his eyes told her otherwise. Eliza tightened her shawl around Clara and turned toward the exit. Henry followed a step, but she stopped him with a raised hand. "Please, you have given us enough. Let us go." Before he could answer, a soft knock echoed from the corridor. The housekeeper appeared, her expression stern and expectant. "Your Grace," she said, with a voice sharpened by disapproval, "the staff wishes to know if you require anything further before they retire." Henry's jaw tightened. "They may retire." Mrs. Greaves's gaze slid to Eliza and Clara. "Shall I escort them out?" Eliza felt the sting of humiliation shoot up her spine. She drew herself upright, though exhaustion weighed her limbs. "We can find the door ourselves, Mrs. Greaves." The housekeeper bowed stiffly. "As you wish." Henry stepped between them. "Mrs. Greaves, a word." The housekeeper's brows lifted, but she followed him a few paces away. Their voices dropped low, though Eliza caught fragments. They entered the manor unbidden. They were hungry. "It sets a precedent," Henry cut in sharply. "A humane one." Mrs. Greaves drew back, startled. She recovered quickly, offering a tight nod. "Very well, Your Grace." He dismissed her with a look, then returned to Eliza. "You should not face such treatment. I do not expect kindness from those who owe me nothing," she replied. "It is natural." "It is not," Henry said quietly. "Not within my household." Eliza shifted Clara's weight in her arms. "Your household is not mine, nor should it be." Clara stirred, murmuring something half asleep. Henry glanced at the child with a gentle concern that deepened the ache in Eliza's chest. He took a small breath. "If you insist on leaving," he said, "then at least allow me to accompany you to the door." She wanted to refuse. She wanted to walk away without owing him anything more, yet she found herself nodding. They walked together through the long corridor, his footsteps slow and measured beside her quicker ones. As they reached the vestibule, Henry opened the heavy door. A blast of winter air swept inside, stealing the warmth from the space. Eliza shivered despite herself. Clara whimpered in her sleep. Henry frowned. "You cannot carry her all the way back to the village in this cold. We have walked through worse," Eliza murmured. "We will manage." The snow drifted down in quiet sheets, settling on the steps like a pale curtain. Henry looked toward the path leading to the village, then back at Eliza. "Come to the manor tomorrow," he said. "Let me arrange something. Food, clothing, whatever you require." Eliza shook her head slowly. "I will not be spoken of as a woman who takes advantage of a duke's charity. No one will. People already whisper when we enter a room," she said softly. "You heard the servants." Henry held her gaze. "They whisper because I have given them the wrong impression. I will correct it." "You cannot correct the world's tongue, Your Grace." No, he admitted, but I can choose not to bow to it. She wanted to believe him, but she had lived too long under the weight of rumors, pity, and judgment. She had learned that good intentions rarely protected anyone. She lowered her eyes. We should leave now. Thank you for the meal. Before Henry could answer, Mrs. Greaves appeared again, holding a lantern. Allow me to guide you to the road, Mrs. Moore. The tone was polite, yet distant, as if the housekeeper wished to make clear that Eliza no longer belonged inside the manor walls. Eliza accepted the lantern with a small nod. Henry stepped forward. Mrs. Greaves, I asked to speak with Mrs. Moore privately in the morning. See that the staff is aware. Mrs. Greaves hesitated. Of course, Your Grace. Eliza's cheeks warmed. You needn't summon me again. I do. Henry said softly. There is something important I must ask. Ask now, she whispered, but he shook his head. Tomorrow. She wanted to press him, but she sensed that whatever question lingered on his tongue was not one he wished to share in the cold doorway. Instead, she said only, Good night, Your Grace. Henry inclined his head. Good night, Mrs. Moore. Good night, Clara. Clara murmured a sleepy, good night, without opening her eyes. Eliza stepped into the snow. The cold wrapped around them immediately. The lantern crackled in her hand as the wind pressed against its glass. She walked a few paces before daring to glance back. Henry still stood in the doorway, watching them until they disappeared beyond the gate. She did not see the way his shoulders dropped once they were gone. She did not see the troubled look that crossed his face. She did not see the memory rising behind his eyes. The next morning, Eliza entered the village market with Clara by her side. The sky was still heavy with clouds, the promise of more snow hovering above them. She kept her head low, hoping to pass unnoticed, but whispers waited like shadows at every corner. That's her, the widow found inside Blackwood Manor. The Duke fed her, they say, and the child. Shameful that she would go begging to a nobleman. I heard she was bold enough to walk right into the dining hall. Eliza held Clara's hand tighter. She kept walking, jaw clenched, heart pounding. Clara looked up with worried eyes. Mama, why are they staring? Eliza forced a smile. They are curious, my love, that is all. But curiosity was rarely innocent. At the butcher's stall, the man avoided her gaze. We have nothing left today, he muttered, though Eliza saw a full side of pork hanging in plain sight. At the baker's, she placed her last coins on the counter. The baker sighed. Your money is acceptable, Mrs. Moore, but I advise you to tread carefully. The village dislikes scandal. Eliza's face burned. I have caused none. People talk, the baker said. They always do. She left without answering. Clara clung to her skirt. I don't like it here today. I know, Eliza whispered. We shall go home soon. But as they crossed the square, two women stepped into their path, both wrapped in thick cloaks, both wearing expressions of delicate superiority. Mrs. Moore, one said. A word. Eliza stiffened. I have nothing to say. But we do, the other replied. It's about last night. Clara pressed against Eliza's side. Eliza inhaled slowly. Say what you must. The first woman smiled, though there was no warmth in it. You must take care. A duke's charity is not something a woman of your station should become accustomed to. Eliza kept her voice even. It was a meal, nothing more. Of course, the second woman said lightly, though some might interpret it otherwise. Some might think, the first added, that a widow with a pretty face could entice a lonely man. Eliza felt the ground sway for a moment. You speak without decency. We speak with concern, the woman replied. For the Duke, and for the village's reputation. What reputation? Eliza asked quietly. The one that starves children in winter? The women gasped, as if struck. Clara tugged her sleeve. Mamma, can we go? Eliza gathered her composure and moved past them without another word. She did not look back. She did not need to. The whispers rose once more. She took Clara home as quickly as possible, her heart aching with a familiar humiliation. She had survived worse than gossip, but she hated that her daughter had to witness it. By late afternoon, Clara grew quiet, curling under their thin blanket with a pallor that frightened Eliza. She touched the child's forehead. Warm. Too warm. Fear crept in. Eliza Moore. The voice startled her. She looked up. Henry Ashford stood at the doorway of her small cottage, snow in his hair, a doctor beside him. She rose, breath trembling. "Your Grace, what are you doing here?" "You did not come to the manor," Henry said. "So I came to you." "But why?" He stepped forward, his voice low. "Because Clara is ill, and because there is something I must tell you." Eliza's pulse quickened. "Tell me what?" Henry inhaled to speak. But the doctor touched his arm and leaned in, whispering something urgent. Henry's face tightened. He turned to Eliza with grave eyes. "Eliza, did you know your husband once worked at Blackwood Manor?" Eliza stared at Henry, the doctor's question hanging between them like a cold breath. The room was too small, too bare, too fragile to hold such a revelation. She felt Clara's warm weight against her chest and fought the instinct to shield her from words the child could not yet understand. "Yes," Eliza whispered. "Thomas worked at the manor years ago, in the stables." "Why do you ask?" The doctor exchanged a glance with Henry, then turned to examine Clara more closely. He touched her forehead, lifted her eyelids, and pressed gently at her throat with practiced hands. Clara whimpered, half asleep. Henry stepped toward Eliza. His voice held a quiet urgency. "We found something among the estate ledgers. His name appears in a report I had not seen before." Eliza frowned. "A report?" Henry hesitated, as if choosing his words with care. "It suggests his dismissal was unfair, that he should never have been sent away." Eliza's breath caught. Her grip on Clara tightened. "Dismissed? He left because he was told there was no work." Henry's jaw tensed. "That may not have been the truth." The doctor rose, interrupting the moment. "The child has a fever brought on by cold and exhaustion. She needs warmth, broth, and rest, and someone must watch her carefully through the night." He turned to Henry. "If she worsens, send for me immediately." Eliza nodded quickly. "Thank you." The doctor gathered his things and stepped outside. Henry lingered at the door, his gaze fixed on Clara with growing concern. "May I come in?" he asked quietly. Eliza hesitated. Part of her wanted to send him away to protect what little pride she had left. But Clara's faint cough weakened her resolve. She stepped aside. Henry entered the modest cottage, his tall frame almost too large for the low ceiling and narrow walls. He looked around only briefly, taking in the sparse furniture, the cold air, the thin blankets, and his expression tightened, not with judgment, but with something far heavier: guilt, responsibility. Eliza laid Clara on their only bed and covered her with a blanket. Henry remained near the door, as if unsure he belonged in such an intimate space. "How long has she been unwell?" he asked softly. "Since morning," Eliza said. "She tried to hide it from me. She didn't want me to worry." Henry moved closer. "Children do that far too often." Eliza released a slow breath. "The villagers spoke today. Cruel things." She heard some of it. Henry closed his eyes briefly, as if absorbing the weight of her words. "I should have anticipated the gossip." "It is not your fault," Eliza said. "They look for anything to fill their days." "But you were humiliated because of me." "Not because of you, Your Grace, because of their tongues." He opened his eyes and looked at her with an earnestness she did not expect. "I will put a stop to it." "You cannot," she whispered. "No one can stop people from speaking." Henry stepped closer. "Then let them speak. I care far more about what happens in this cottage tonight." Eliza swallowed hard. "Your Grace," he shook his head. "Henry." She looked away quickly. "I should not call you that. You should call me what is comfortable for you," he said. "But I will call you Eliza." Something inside her stirred at the sound of her name on his tongue. She turned away, busying herself with a pot of water on the small stove. Henry watched silently for a moment. "Allow me to help." "You have helped enough," she replied firmly. "Not nearly enough," he said. "Not if what I discovered is true." Eliza paused, spoon in hand. "Tell me." Henry exhaled slowly. "The report states that Thomas was dismissed after refusing to lie about damaged provisions ordered by the steward at the time. The steward blamed him. The punishment fell on a man who did nothing wrong." Eliza's hand shook. "Thomas never told me." "Perhaps he was ashamed," Henry said gently. "Or perhaps he hoped to return later once tempers cooled." "He tried," she whispered. "He went back twice. They turned him away." Henry's expression darkened. "I was away during that period. I should have reviewed every dismissal upon my return. but I trusted the ledger without question. None of that matters now, Eliza said, though her voice trembled. Thomas is gone. Right or wrong, nothing can change that. Henry stepped closer, his voice low. But it can change what happens to you. She turned to face him. Do not say that. Why not? Because it is pity, she said, and I will not live on pity. He shook his head. This is not pity. This is justice. The firmness in his tone startled her. She looked into his eyes and saw a sincerity she had not expected from a man of his rank. It unsettled her more than cruelty ever had. Before she could answer, Clara whimpered again. Eliza rushed to her side. Henry followed, stopping beside her at the foot of the bed. Clara opened her eyes, glassy with fever. Mama? I'm here, sweetheart. Clara blinked at Henry. Are you here too? Henry knelt beside the bed. Yes, Clara. I came to see how you're feeling. Clara reached for his hand. Her small fingers curled around his without hesitation. Henry stiffened for a moment, then relaxed, his thumb brushing the back of her hand with a gentleness that surprised even him. You'll feel better soon, he said softly. Eliza watched him, something tightening in her chest. Clara closed her eyes again, drifting back into sleep. Henry rose slowly. She likes you. Eliza folded her arms. Children see only kindness. They do not understand the complications behind it. Perhaps adults complicate what is simple, he said. She felt her breath catch. Your Grace. Henry, he murmured again. Footsteps sounded outside. A shadow moved past the window. Eliza stiffened. Someone is out there. Henry stepped quickly to the door and opened it. 2 villagers stood in the snow, faces shadowed, arms folded, eyes full of suspicion. One stepped forward nervously when he saw Henry. Your Grace, the man said, dipping his head. We saw your horse outside this cottage. And? Henry asked calmly. We thought, well, people are saying things in the village. About the widow. About last night. Behind him the other man added, It's not fitting for a duke to call on a woman alone. Henry stepped out onto the snow-covered path, his voice steady but edged with authority. Mrs. Moore is caring for an ill child. I came to bring a doctor. If that has become a matter for gossip, then the village should examine its own conscience before examining hers. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Henry continued, I expect no more talk on this matter. The first man swallowed hard. Yes, Your Grace. They backed away, whispering urgently to each other before disappearing into the night. Henry closed the door and turned back to Eliza. This is what I feared. You should not have spoken so sharply, Eliza whispered. They will resent you. They will resent us. I do not answer to rumors, Henry said, and I will not allow you to be shamed for needing help. Eliza pressed her hand to her forehead. You will only make things worse. He stepped closer. Then let them be worse. They will not change what is right. She shook her head. You do not understand. Henry's voice softened. Then help me understand. She looked at him for a long moment. She saw the sincerity, the conflict, the gravity of a man caught between duty and conscience. She opened her mouth to speak, but her voice refused to form the words. Instead, she whispered, Why are you doing this? Henry's breath caught. Because I saw your child look at my table as if it were a dream, and because I cannot forget it. Eliza's heart pounded. You must forget it. I cannot, he said. Clara whimpered again. Henry looked at the child, then at Eliza. Eliza, come back to the manor tomorrow. Let me explain everything. I do not know if I can, she whispered. Please, Henry said. There is more you must hear. Her silence stretched. Henry stepped backward toward the door. Tomorrow morning, I will be waiting in the dining hall. He opened the door, letting the cold rush in. Eliza, he said softly, this concerns far more than last night. She stared at him, her heart trembling. What does it concern? She whispered. Henry hesitated, the candlelight casting shadows across his face. It concerns a secret the village never learned, one that began the day your husband was dismissed. Dawn crept slowly across the sky when Eliza pushed open the cottage door and stepped outside. The cold bit at her cheeks, but her thoughts were sharper still. Clara slept at last, her fever lowered after a long night of tending. Eliza had not closed her eyes once. She could not. Henry's last words echoed in her mind, circling her like restless crows. A secret the village never learned, one that began the day your husband was dismissed. She repeated the words under her breath as she walked, unsure if she was doing the right thing by coming to the manor again, but she could not live another day with uncertainty gnawing at her ribs. She needed to know the truth, whatever it cost. When she reached Blackwood Manor, a thin layer of frost covered the steps. A footman opened the door before she could knock, as if Henry had instructed the staff to expect her. His expression held polite surprise, not contempt. That unsettled her more than disdain would have. "His Grace awaits in the dining hall," the footman said. Eliza followed the familiar corridor. The walls seemed taller in the morning light, the portraits sterner, the silence heavier. When she entered the dining hall, Henry stood near the window, his hands clasped behind his back. He turned the moment she stepped inside. "Eliza," he said with a breath of relief, "you came." "I had to," she answered. "Tell me what you meant last night." He nodded toward the table. "Sit, please." She remained standing. Henry sighed, moved to the hearth and stoked the fire before turning back to her. "Very well, I will begin." She swallowed. "I'm listening." "I read the steward's report again this morning," Henry said, "and I compared it with a letter my father wrote less than a week before he died." Eliza's heart tightened. "What did the letter say?" "It confirmed that your husband was dismissed for refusing to take blame that belonged to someone else." "That part we already knew, but there was more." Henry paused. "The steward who accused him was under investigation." Eliza's breath caught. "For what?" "For selling estate goods for personal gain," Henry said. "Food, supplies, livestock, all depleted without record. My father suspected him, but he died before gathering proof." Eliza felt her knees weaken. Henry stepped toward her instinctively, but she raised a hand to stop him. "Please, continue." Henry remained still. "The steward dismissed your husband to hide his own actions, and after Thomas left," his voice softened, "so did the truth." Eliza clasped her hands tightly. Her voice trembled. "Thomas never knew the reason. He believed he had failed. He carried that shame to his grave." "I am deeply sorry," Henry said, his voice thick with remorse. "This happened under my family's watch. I should have uncovered it sooner." "It is not your doing," she whispered. "It is my responsibility," Henry insisted. She looked down, unable to withstand the intensity in his eyes. Every part of her ached. Anger for what Thomas endured, grief for what was stolen, shame for how far she had fallen since his death. "Eliza," Henry said softly, "there is more I must ask you." "Ask," she murmured. Henry drew closer. "Did Thomas ever share details of his last months here? Anything unusual?" "Nothing," she said. "Only that work had grown tense. The steward questioned everything he did. He said the atmosphere felt wrong." Henry exhaled. "Then he sensed the corruption before anyone else." "Why does this matter now?" Eliza asked. "Because," Henry answered, "the same ledgers that record his dismissal also show a second name written beside it. Faded, crossed out, but visible if you look closely." Eliza frowned. "Who?" Henry hesitated. "A maid named Evelyn Turner." Eliza's breath halted. "My sister." Henry's eyes widened. "Your sister?" "Yes," Eliza whispered. "She worked here briefly before she married and moved away, but she stayed only a few months. She said the manor felt unsafe, though she never explained why." Henry steadied himself. "Eliza, her name appears only on one page, and next to hers is a note. Questioned, asked to remain silent. Then the name is crossed out." Eliza felt her stomach twist. "Remain silent about what?" "I don't know," he said, "but whatever she witnessed involved the steward and the missing goods." Eliza pressed a hand to her mouth. "She said nothing to me. Not a word. Perhaps she wished to protect you," Henry murmured. "Perhaps she feared being believed." Eliza backed away a step. "This is too much, Your Grace." "Henry," he corrected quietly. "Please, call me Henry." She shook her head. "No, I cannot." "You can," he said. "You must. The truth involves both of us now." She looked at him, breathing hard. "Why? Why does it involve you?" Henry's posture stiffened. His voice lowered. "Because part of what happened occurred during my first year as Duke. I was young, reckless. I trusted the wrong man, and I ignored warning signs I should have seen. You were not responsible for another man's corruption, Eliza said. But my neglect allowed it, Henry answered. I turned my back on duties I did not want, and your husband paid the price. Eliza wrapped her arms around herself. What do you expect me to do with this knowledge? I cannot change the past. I cannot confront a dead man. I cannot reclaim what we lost. No, Henry said, but you can be compensated, restored. Her head snapped up. I will not accept charity. This is not charity, Henry said, voice firm. This is restitution. My father meant to offer it. I will finish what he began. Why now? She whispered. Why me? Why Thomas? Henry's answer came slowly. Because I saw the consequence of our failure standing before me last night, a starving child staring at a table full of food, and because the moment I looked at your face, I remembered seeing you once before, years ago. You came to the manor with your sister. I was hardly older than 20. You laughed in the servants' corridor when you spilled tea on your apron. Eliza stared at him, startled. I don't recall. I do, Henry said. I remember because you looked at this place with such wonder, and last night you looked at it with fear. Eliza felt the heat rise to her face. You should forget such moments, Your Grace. I cannot forget them, he said quietly, and I will not forget what was done to your family. Before she could reply, hurried footsteps echoed down the corridor. Eliza turned sharply as Mrs. Greaves entered, breathless and tense. Your Grace, she said, lowering her head. Lady Beatrice has arrived. She is in the south parlour. Henry straightened. Beatrice? Why so early? She insists she must speak with you at once, the housekeeper said. It concerns your recent activities. Eliza felt a cold wave pass through her. She took a step back, instinctively withdrawing from whatever storm approached. Henry turned to her. Remain here. I will be back shortly. No, Eliza said immediately. I should leave. Not yet, Henry insisted. Please. But Mrs. Greaves's eyes flicked to Eliza with unmistakable warning. Lady Beatrice did not come alone, Your Grace. Henry frowned. What do you mean? She brought her mother. Eliza's breath hitched. Mrs. Greaves finished in a whisper, heavy with implication. They say she has come to ask whether you intend to compromise yourself further on behalf of this widow. Eliza stood frozen as the housekeeper's words settled over the room like falling ash. Compromise herself further. The accusation rang louder than the crackling fire in the hearth. She could barely breathe beneath the weight of it. Henry's expression darkened. Mrs. Greaves, show Lady Beatrice to the blue salon. I will speak with her there. Mrs. Greaves hesitated. Your Grace, she expects you at once. And she shall have me, Henry said, voice controlled but sharp at the edges. Go. The housekeeper retreated with a low bow, though her eyes flicked toward Eliza, lingering with a mixture of pity and reproach. When she disappeared down the corridor, silence closed around them. Eliza clasped her hands together tightly. I should go. This is becoming dangerous for you. Henry stepped toward her. Do you think I care what Beatrice believes? You should, Eliza said. She is your equal. She has connections, influence, and You are not beneath anyone, Henry interrupted. Eliza gave a strained laugh. The entire county would disagree. I do not answer to the county, Henry said, and I certainly do not answer to gossip. You will whether you wish to or not, she whispered. A duke cannot afford scandal. Henry exhaled, the sound heavy with frustration. Eliza, listen to me. But footsteps approached again, quick steps, sharper than Mrs. Greaves's careful tread. Eliza turned as Lady Beatrice Pennington swept into the dining hall without waiting for permission. Her entrance was graceful, deliberate, and filled with icy superiority. Her light blue gown glimmered faintly in the morning light, and her posture was as rigid as the frost outside. Behind her trailed her mother, Lady Helena Pennington, a woman whose presence filled the room with a silence more cutting than speech. Henry, Beatrice said, her voice smooth and cold, I cannot believe what I have heard. Henry's jaw tightened. Good morning, Beatrice. Good? She echoed, letting her eyes travel slowly from Henry to Eliza. I hardly think it a good morning at all. Lady Helena followed her daughter's gaze with open disdain. Your Grace, is it true you summoned a widow to your private dining hall at dawn? I summoned her because I needed to speak with her, Henry replied evenly. Nothing more. Lady Helena's voice sharpened. And you see no impropriety in that? No, Henry said. Beatrice stepped closer, her expression a mask of injured dignity. Henry, we have known each other since childhood. I have always trusted your judgment. But this is beyond understanding. Eliza lowered her eyes, wishing she could vanish into the floorboards. Henry's tone cooled. Beatrice, this discussion does not concern you. It concerns me deeply, Beatrice said. I have heard the whispers. The villagers are already talking about you and this woman. Eliza flinched at the venom in the last word. Henry stepped protectively toward her. Beatrice, watch your tone. My tone? Beatrice said, raising her voice for the first time. Your behavior threatens your reputation and mine. Yours? Henry repeated, incredulous. Beatrice lifted her chin. Our families are aligned. Everyone expects... Henry cut her off. Expectations do not dictate my choices. Lady Helena interjected with a low, forceful calm. Your Grace, the Pennington name is not to be trifled with. Marriages have been arranged for far less reason. You know the alliance our families have discussed for years. Henry stiffened. I have made no promises. Lady Helena's gaze hardened. A duke need not speak a promise for society to consider it binding. Eliza's stomach turned. She should not be here. She should not witness this. She took a small step back. Your Grace, allow me to... No, Henry said, turning to her. Stay. Beatrice's eyes flashed. Stay. Henry, have you lost your senses? This woman entered your manor uninvited. She stole food. And now you defend her against your own social circle? Henry spoke with deliberate calm. She came for her child, Beatrice scoffed. So she claims. Eliza's face burned. She opened her mouth, but Henry stepped forward before she could speak. Do not insult her, he said, voice low and dangerous. Lady Helena folded her arms. Your Grace, you place yourself at risk. This woman is of low birth, with no fortune and no name of influence. Her mere presence threatens your standing. Eliza felt her breath shorten. She had endured humiliation before, but this cut deeper, because Henry was caught in the center of it. Henry, Beatrice said, softening her tone in a faltering attempt at persuasion. You are a man of duty, of position. Why should you jeopardize everything for someone who offers you nothing? Eliza felt her heart twist at the words. Nothing. That was what she had to offer. Nothing but struggle, shame, and endless need. Henry took a step closer to Beatrice. Because she matters. Beatrice blinked. She matters? Yes, he said. Eliza's breath caught. Lady Helena's voice chilled the air. Explain yourself, Henry. Do you mean to say this woman has influence over you? Beatrice shook her head in disbelief. Henry, surely not. Henry turned to Eliza, and his expression shifted. Something gentler, something conflicted, something she could not bear to see. Eliza's husband was wronged by this estate, Henry said. I have only just discovered the truth. I owe her restitution. Beatrice gave a cold laugh. Restitution is handled through coin or property. It does not require secret meetings at dawn. Henry's eyes darkened. Nothing here is secret. Lady Helena's gaze sharpened. What then is it? Compassion? Attraction? Or simply guilt? The silence that followed was suffocating. Henry spoke at last. It is my responsibility, and I will not neglect it. Lady Helena stepped forward, lowering her voice so only Henry and Eliza could hear. If you continue on this path, the Pennington family will withdraw all support for your upcoming parliamentary appointment. Henry's eyes flashed with anger. Then so be it. Beatrice's face paled. Henry, you cannot mean that. I do, he said firmly. Eliza's hand flew to her mouth. This was too much. She shook her head, stepping forward. Your Grace, stop this, she whispered. You cannot risk your future for a matter that concerns me alone. Henry turned to her, reaching instinctively for her arm. Eliza, but she pulled back. Please, do not do this. I will leave at once. I will walk away now. Your reputation will recover quickly if I disappear. Beatrice gave a small confident smile at that, as if Eliza had finally spoken sense. Henry took a breath, steadying himself. Eliza, you will not leave because of them. It is not because of them, she said, voice breaking. It is because of you. I do not want to be the reason you lose everything. Beatrice stepped closer, triumph gleaming in her eyes. You see, Henry? Even she understands. Eliza forced herself to speak again. Let me go. I do not belong here. Your world is not meant for people like me. You belong wherever you choose to stand, Henry said quietly. She shook her head. I choose to leave. Before Henry could answer, Lady Helena cleared her throat pointedly. Henry, Lady Beatrice and I will wait in the south parlour. You will join us promptly. She swept from the room with her daughter close behind her. Beatrice paused just long enough to cast one last, icy glance at Eliza. You have had your moment, Mrs. Moore, she murmured. Pray it has not cost him too dearly. She left without waiting for a reply. The doors closed with a heavy thud. Silence flooded the dining hall again, but this time it was charged, trembling, painful. Henry turned to Eliza. Do not let her words scar you. They already have, Eliza whispered. And worse still, they are true. No, Henry said. They are shallow judgments from shallow minds. That does not mean society will ignore them. Henry's voice softened. Eliza, look at me. She did. You are not the downfall of my reputation, he said. You are the reminder of what it means to be human. Her chest tightened. You cannot speak like that. Why not? Because it sounds like affection, she whispered. Henry's breath caught. Neither moved. Then a servant burst into the dining hall, breathless. Your Grace, he stammered. Lady Helena demands your presence immediately. She says the matter cannot wait. Henry closed his eyes briefly. Of course she does. The servant bowed and hurried out. Henry turned back to Eliza. His voice was low, urgent. Stay here until I return. I cannot. Please, he said. Do this one thing for me. Her heart ached. I do not belong here, Henry. He took a slow, pained breath. You belong more than you know. Eliza stepped back, shaking her head. You must go to them. They are your world. And you? He asked softly. I am nothing more than an interruption. No, Henry said. You are the reason I opened my eyes. She felt her breath falter. He lowered his voice even more. When I return, we will finish this conversation. She shook her head. There is nothing more to say. Henry stepped toward her. There is everything to say. But before he could reach her, Mrs. Greaves rushed in again, face pale. Your Grace, she said shakily, Lady Beatrice insists on seeing you this instant. She says if you delay, she will announce her intentions publicly. Henry's brows snapped together. Her intentions? Mrs. Greaves swallowed. She intends to secure an engagement before the morning ends. Henry stood motionless, as if the air had thickened around him. Eliza could almost hear the gears turning in his mind. He looked suddenly older, burdened, and painfully aware of the trap tightening around him. An engagement before the morning ends. Mrs. Greaves hovered in the doorway, hands clasped as though prepared for the ceiling to collapse. She darted a nervous glance at Eliza, then stepped hastily aside, unsure whether she should remain or flee. Henry finally exhaled. That is enough. I will deal with her. Eliza stepped forward, her voice barely above a whisper. Your Grace, do not go in anger. It will only make matters worse. Henry turned to her, his expression taut. She does not dictate my life. No, Eliza said softly, but society does. Henry met her eyes. For a moment, neither spoke. The cold truth hung between them, heavier than any accusation Lady Beatrice had thrown. Mrs. Greaves cleared her throat gently. Your Grace, they are waiting. Henry squared his shoulders. Then let them wait. Another moment. He crossed the room in 3 long strides and stopped in front of Eliza. She could feel the warmth of him, despite the chill seeping through the hall. Eliza, he said quietly, before I speak to them, you must understand one thing. She held her breath. I will not enter an engagement because someone demands it. Not Beatrice, not her mother, not the entire county. She shook her head. You cannot defy them all. Yes, he replied, I can. And what then? She whispered. You know what people will say. You know what they already say. He stepped closer. I care what you say. She drew back a fraction, heart pounding. Do not make this harder. Then tell me you want me to walk away, he said. Tell me plainly that you want nothing of my help, nothing of me, and I will leave this room at once. Her lips parted, but the words would not come. Her chest ached with the weight of everything she could not say, everything she tried so desperately to bury. Henry's eyes softened, but Mrs. Greaves intruded again, wringing her hands. "Your Grace, Lady Helena is becoming impatient. She sent a footman to find you." Henry closed his eyes briefly. "Then I must go." He opened them again, and they settled on Eliza with a final, resolute warmth. "I will return." He left the dining hall with long, determined steps. Once the door closed behind him, Mrs. Greaves turned to Eliza, her expression a blend of curiosity and concern. "You must be careful," the housekeeper murmured. "A woman in your position cannot be seen lingering in the Duke's private rooms." Eliza stiffened. "I did not choose this. I did not ask for any of this." Mrs. Greaves's features softened slightly. "I believe you, but belief will not shield you from tongues sharper than winter wind." She paused. "You should go home. You have endured enough for one day." Eliza wanted to agree. Her heart pounded with the urge to flee, but something anchored her, a sense that running now would only worsen whatever storm Henry was walking into. "I will wait in the corridor," she said. "Not here." Mrs. Greaves didn't argue. She nodded toward the hallway. Eliza stepped out and closed the dining hall door behind her. The corridor seemed endless, lined with portraits whose painted eyes followed her every step. She positioned herself near a window where she could see the snowy grounds outside, hoping distance would grant her some sense of propriety. But the voices began almost immediately. Lady Beatrice's sharp tone drifted faintly from the blue salon, followed by Lady Helena's low, commanding murmur. Henry's deeper voice answered them, steady but edged with frustration. Eliza strained to listen, but forced herself not to move closer. Some things were not meant for her ears, no matter how closely tied she was to the center of the conflict. Minutes stretched. 10, 15, 20. Eliza paced. Sat. Stood again. Her palms grew cold from pressing against the frosty window glass. She imagined Henry inside that room, Beatrice accusing, Lady Helena insisting, and Henry trying to protect Eliza from the very scandal she never meant to create. A door opened suddenly. Eliza jumped. Mrs. Greaves hurried toward her, skirts swishing. "Mrs. Moore," she whispered urgently, "you must stay back. Lady Beatrice is furious." Eliza swallowed hard. "What has happened?" But before the housekeeper could answer, the raised voices grew louder. "You promised nothing, Henry," Beatrice cried. "Nothing at all after years of expectation?" "I promised nothing," Henry replied, "and I will not be bound by assumptions." Eliza's breath caught. She took a small step backward, hoping not to be seen. Beatrice's mother spoke next. "You are making a mockery of everything your father built, everything your position demands." Henry's voice cooled to stone. "My father built this estate on principles of justice, not manipulation." A pause. Then Beatrice's voice, high and trembling with indignation. "Is this because of her?" Eliza froze. Henry responded without hesitation. "No, it is because of me." Eliza closed her eyes. That single sentence sent warmth and dread through her in equal measure. Beatrice hissed something unintelligible, then said more clearly, "If you refuse to act with sense, then I will protect my own name. I will not allow myself to be humiliated." "Humiliation is not my intention," Henry said. "But it is the result," Beatrice snapped. Eliza stepped farther back into the shadows, heart twisting. She had never desired to stand between Henry and his world, yet here she was, woven into the very fabric of his conflicts. Suddenly, the salon door burst open. Beatrice stormed out, face flushed with barely contained fury. She halted when she saw Eliza standing at the end of the corridor. The silence between them was chilling. Beatrice approached with long, elegant steps, every inch of her trembling from outrage. She stopped inches away from Eliza, staring as though she were looking at a stain on polished silver. "So," Beatrice said, "you truly mean to stay in his life?" Eliza forced her voice to remain steady. "No, Lady Beatrice, I mean only to learn the truth about my husband's dismissal." Beatrice laughed coldly. "Spare me. You have turned this house upside down in a matter of days. How convenient for you." Eliza stiffened. "I never asked for the Duke's attention." "Oh, but you accepted it," Beatrice said, leaning closer. "Widows often learn to survive on the compassion of men, but you have taken it further than most." Eliza's cheeks burned with humiliation. She wanted to walk away. She wanted to defend herself, but she had no weapons against such cruelty. "You misunderstand me," Eliza said quietly. "Do I?" Beatrice whispered. "Or do you misunderstand your place?" Before Eliza could answer, Henry appeared in the doorway behind Beatrice. His face was pale with anger. "Beatrice," he said sharply. Beatrice spun toward him, her expression tightening. "I have said what I needed to say, and you have overstepped," Henry replied. She lifted her chin. "I have preserved what remains of my dignity." Henry stepped between them. "This conversation ends now." Beatrice turned away, eyes glistening with rage. "Then enjoy the ruin she brings you." She swept past Henry in a flurry of silk and cold perfume, disappearing down the corridor. Eliza watched her go, heart pounding painfully. Henry turned back to her, stepping close enough for his voice to soften. "Eliza, forgive her cruelty." Eliza shook her head. "She spoke truth, not cruelty." "No," Henry said firmly. "She spoke fear." Eliza lifted her gaze. "Henry, I should leave, now, before more damage is done." He reached out and caught her arm, not with force but with desperation. "Do not run from me." "I must," she whispered. "If I stay, you will be trapped in scandal. If I go, you can repair this." "I do not want to repair this," he said. "I want to repair what was done to you." She stepped back, pulling her arm free. "This is not the way," she whispered. His jaw tightened. "Then tell me what is." She wanted to. She wanted to speak her fear, her gratitude, her impossible longing. But the words lodged in her throat like a stone. "Give me time," she breathed. Henry's expression flickered. Hope, confusion, something deeper. "Time? Yes," Eliza said. "Time to think. Time to protect my child. Time to keep both of us from drowning in this." Henry looked at her for a long moment, pain flickering across his eyes. "Eliza," he whispered. Before he could say more, a servant rushed into the corridor, panting. "Your Grace, urgent news," he said. "It is Lady Beatrice. She has gone to the village and she is speaking to everyone." Henry stiffened. "Speaking of what?" The servant swallowed hard. "Of you, and Mrs. Moore, and the supposed impropriety at Blackwood Manor." Eliza felt the ground tilt beneath her. Not even the coldest night she had endured could match the chill that swept through her chest at the servant's words. Impropriety, spoken publicly, in the village, by Lady Beatrice herself. Henry ran a hand through his hair, his breath sharp. "She left the manor without my permission." The servant nodded. "She went with her mother. They took a carriage into the village square." Eliza covered her mouth in shock. "She is telling them lies. About you, about me, about us," Henry corrected grimly. "She is doing exactly what she accused you of, placing herself as the victim in a situation she created." Mrs. Greaves wrung her hands at the end of the corridor. "Your Grace, this is dangerous. Once gossip escapes into the village, it spreads like fire." Henry turned to her. "Prepare a carriage. For you, Your Grace?" Mrs. Greaves asked. "For all of us," Henry said without hesitation. "We are going to the village." Eliza inhaled sharply. "No, I cannot go there. Not now. They already look at me with suspicion, and they will look at you with condemnation if we do nothing," Henry said. "I will not allow Lady Beatrice to define this narrative." Eliza shook her head, heart racing. "If you appear at my side, it will worsen everything. If I do not appear," he countered, "you will be alone in the center of a storm meant for both of us." Mrs. Greaves stepped forward timidly. "Your Grace, forgive me, but if you go out publicly with Mrs. Moore, you may confirm what Lady Beatrice implies." Henry's jaw clenched. "I would rather stand beside Eliza in daylight than hide in shadow for the sake of appearances." Eliza felt the breath leave her lungs. Her pulse throbbed painfully in her throat. She could not bear the intensity in his voice or the resolve in his eyes. "Henry," she whispered, "listen to her. Please. If you defend me too openly, you will make this worse." He shook his head. "I refuse to let one falsehood become the foundation of your reputation." "It is already too late," she said. "Beatrice will be believed." "Not if I speak," Henry said firmly. Eliza stepped back, her hands trembling. "You cannot confront her, not publicly, not when the entire village is watching." Henry looked at her for a long, steady moment. "I can do nothing else." The room fell silent. Mrs. Greaves slipped down the corridor, leaving them with space to speak without witnesses. Eliza pressed a hand against the wall, needing the support. "Henry," she whispered, "why are you doing this?" He stepped toward her slowly. "Because you should not bear a burden meant for me." "But I am already holding it," she said, "and every step you take toward defending me only tightens the noose around your position." "I do not care," he said. "You must," she insisted. "Your world depends on reputation." "And what of your world?" he asked. "Your world depends on merely surviving." Eliza swallowed hard. "You cannot risk everything for the sake of a woman who has nothing to offer in return." Henry's voice dropped, thick with something unspoken. "Do you truly believe you offer nothing?" Her breath trembled. "In your world, yes." He moved closer still, enough that she felt the warmth of him in the cold corridor. "Eliza, you offer more than you know." Her heart pounded so strongly she feared he could hear it. Before she could answer, heavy footsteps approached. The steward appeared, his face pale with worry. "Your Grace," he said, bowing, "I have just returned from the village. Lady Beatrice is speaking with merchants, with families, even with the vicar. She claims her reputation has been threatened by your association with Mrs. Moore." Eliza winced. The steward continued, "She suggests you intend to sever ties with the Pennington family because of an emotional attachment to Mrs. Moore." Eliza covered her face in despair. Henry's fists clenched, "And," the steward added, "she claims she will speak to the magistrate regarding your impropriety." Henry snapped his head up. "Impropriety? On what grounds?" "That you have compromised Mrs. Moore's honor," Eliza gasped. Henry stepped forward. "I have done no such thing." The steward lowered his eyes. "I know that, Your Grace, but Lady Beatrice is very persuasive. Some believe her. Others fear the Pennington influence." Henry turned to Eliza, guilt written across his face. "I should have stopped her sooner." Eliza shook her head. "She would have found another way." Henry looked to the steward. "Order the carriage." Eliza reached for his sleeve, stopping him. "Henry, please, you must not face her publicly. Let me speak with her." "You?" he asked, stunned. "She will tear you apart." "Not if I explain the truth," Eliza said. "Not if I tell her I wish to disappear from your life completely." Henry recoiled. "You cannot say that." "I must," she whispered. "It is the only solution that protects you." He stared at her, pain flickering across his face like a shadow. "Eliza, do not do this." "What choice do we have?" she asked. "The more you defend me, the more they attack." Henry drew a deep breath. "Then let them attack me." "But they won't," she whispered. "They will attack Clara, and that I cannot allow." Henry flinched at the mention of Clara, his expression shifting into something wounded. "I would protect her." "From what?" Eliza asked softly. "From every rumor, every glance, every cruel whisper. You cannot shield us from a world we do not belong in." Henry stepped forward. "You belong with me." The words fell between them like a confession that neither had meant to say aloud. Eliza's chest constricted. "You cannot speak like that." "Then how am I supposed to speak?" he asked, voice raw. "Tell me." She looked at him helplessly. "With reason, with distance, with the restraint required of your title." "I am done with restraint," he said. "Then you will lose everything," she replied, tears burning behind her eyes. Henry shook his head. "I will lose nothing compared to what you have already lost." The corridor fell silent. Then heavy footsteps echoed from the entrance hall. Eliza looked up as a group of servants hurried inside from the cold, carrying news between them in hushed, troubled murmurs. Mrs. Greaves returned, pale, wringing her hands. "Your Grace," she said with urgency, "I am so sorry. But it is worse than we thought." Henry stepped forward. "What now?" Mrs. Greaves swallowed. "Lady Beatrice has just made another declaration in the village square." Henry's voice dropped. "What declaration?" Mrs. Greaves hesitated, her gaze flicking nervously to Eliza. "She claims," Mrs. Greaves whispered, "that you intend to make Mrs. Moore the new mistress of Blackwood Manor." Eliza's knees weakened as if the floor had tilted. "Mistress of Blackwood Manor." The words struck with such force she gripped the nearest chair to steady herself. Henry looked as though someone had slapped him. She said what? He asked, stepping toward Mrs. Greaves. Mrs. Greaves twisted her hands. Her exact words were that you intend to place Mrs. Moore at the head of your household. The villagers gasped, Your Grace. And Lady Beatrice? She appeared triumphant. Henry's face darkened. A lie born of desperation. Eliza pressed a hand to her chest. This is absurd. Why would she say such a thing? Because, Henry said, turning to her, she wishes to paint you in the worst possible light, to make you appear ambitious, calculating, dangerous. Mrs. Greaves added, the villagers now believe you have influence over His Grace. Eliza sank into the chair. They already mistrust me. Now they will despise me. Henry knelt beside her, lowering his voice. Eliza, look at me. She turned her face away. Look at me, he repeated gently. She did. This is not your doing, Henry said. Lady Beatrice has lost control of her pride. This is her retaliation. Retaliation for what? Eliza whispered. For telling the truth. For not choosing her, Henry said quietly. The honesty in his voice startled Eliza. Mrs. Greaves pretended not to hear, stepping back discreetly. Eliza clasped her hands tightly. We should go to the village at once. I must deny everything. No, Henry said firmly. You will not stand in the middle of that square, surrounded by people hungry for scandal. You cannot go alone, Eliza argued. Then I will take my steward, Henry said, and the magistrate if needed. Eliza rose to her feet. Henry, the village already thinks I have used you. If you arrive there in a fury, they will assume the worst. Henry's voice grew sharper. I will not allow lies to go unanswered. She moved closer, speaking in a soft, urgent whisper. And what of Clara? If word reaches the neighboring towns, if gossip spreads, she will be marked as the daughter of a schemer. Forever. Henry shut his eyes, pain carving lines into his face. You cannot be blamed for Beatrice's cruelty. But I will be, Eliza said, and you will be blamed for protecting me. Mrs. Greaves stepped forward hesitantly. Your Grace, forgive me, but Mrs. Moore is right. The more you defend her publicly, the more Lady Beatrice's accusations gain strength. Henry turned sharply. I will not abandon her. No one is asking you to abandon her, Mrs. Greaves said softly. But there are wiser ways to protect her. Eliza took a trembling breath. This is my burden, mine to confront. Let me face her. Henry's eyes flew open. No. Eliza steadied herself. I will go to her quietly, not in the square, not before a crowd. Henry rose. Beatrice will not listen. She may, Eliza said, if she believes your future is safe. He frowned. What are you planning to say? Eliza forced her voice to remain steady. That I have no intention of remaining in your life. That you and I have nothing between us. That I accept any restitution privately and will not darken your door again. Henry stared at her as though she had struck him. Eliza, no. She looked down at her hands. It is the only way to protect Clara. And what of my wishes? He asked, his voice breaking. She forced herself not to react. Your wishes do not matter here. They matter to me, he said. She stepped back as if the words had burned her. And that is why I must leave. The pain that crossed his face was quicker than a blink, but sharp enough to hollow her chest. Before either could speak again, hurried footsteps echoed through the corridor. The steward approached, breathless. Your Grace, the village messenger is here. Henry straightened. What news? He says Lady Beatrice is no longer in the square. She has gone to visit the parson's wife. Mrs. Greaves gasped. The parson's wife? But she speaks to everyone. Eliza closed her eyes. Then the rumors will spread to every household by evening. Henry cursed under his breath, pacing to the window. Outside, the sky grew darker with approaching snowfall. Eliza watched him with a tightening heart. He looked torn between fury and helplessness. The steward added tentatively, There is more, Your Grace. The messenger overheard Lady Beatrice telling the parson's wife that Mrs. Moore has intentions of advancing herself. Eliza froze. Advancing myself? Into the Duke's household, the steward said, and that you encourage it, Your Grace. Henry turned sharply. She told them I encourage impropriety. The steward nodded. Henry ran a hand over his face. This is madness. I must stop her. Eliza stepped forward. Henry, wait. He looked at her, his chest rising with uneven breaths. Do not go after her publicly, Eliza pleaded. If you confront her now, she will twist it into proof. She will say you are defending your supposed attachment. Henry stared at her, then at Mrs. Greaves, then at the steward. No answer satisfied the weight of the moment. Then what do you propose? He whispered. Eliza drew a shaky breath. Let me go to her privately, alone. Let me tell her I want nothing from you. Henry stiffened. I cannot let you confront her alone. You must, she said. She hates me, but she will listen if she thinks I'm retreating. If she believes I am stepping out of your life, she will stop attacking yours. Henry shook his head. Eliza, she stepped closer, touching his sleeve lightly, her voice trembling. Please, this is the only way I can protect Clara. The only way I can protect you. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, then at her face. He seemed torn apart by the weight of everything unspoken. Finally, he whispered, I do not want you to disappear. Her throat tightened. Sometimes disappearing is the greatest kindness a person can offer. He flinched, eyes closing briefly. Mrs. Greaves watched them with a worrying tenderness, but said nothing. Henry opened his eyes again. If she says one unkind thing to you, if she threatens you, I want you to leave at once. Promise me. I promise, Eliza said. He stepped aside with visible reluctance. Where is she now? The steward answered. She will be at the parson's house, but she plans to return to the village square shortly. The messenger overheard her saying she intends to make one final statement. Henry frowned. Final statement? Eliza steadied herself. I will go now, before she returns to the crowd. Henry grabbed her hand without thinking. She froze. His grip tightened, not possessive but desperate. Eliza, be careful. She nodded, pulling her hand free gently. I will. Mrs. Greaves fetched a cloak for her. The steward offered to accompany her, but Eliza shook her head. This must be done alone. Henry watched as she wrapped the cloak around her shoulders. He looked as though he wished to stop her, to pull her back, to lock every door so she could never be touched by cruelty again. But he said nothing. Eliza walked through the long corridor, passed through the entrance hall, and stepped into the bleak winter air. Snow had begun to fall in slow, delicate flakes. She tightened the cloak and followed the path toward the village. With each step, dread pressed heavier on her shoulders. She reached the parish lane faster than expected, her heart pounding in her ears. The parson's house came into view. Then she saw them. Lady Beatrice and Lady Helena stood at the parson's gate, speaking animatedly with the parson's wife. Their voices carried through the crisp winter air. Eliza drew a breath, preparing herself. But before she could step forward, the parson's wife pointed in Eliza's direction. Lady Beatrice turned slowly. Their eyes met. A cruel smile touched Beatrice's lips. Well, she said, her voice carrying clearly across the snow, how fortunate. The widow arrives at the very moment I was discussing her future. Eliza forced her voice not to shake. Lady Beatrice, I came to speak with you, privately, if you will allow it. Beatrice's eyes glittered with triumph. No need for privacy. I have already made my intentions known. Eliza swallowed. And what intentions are those? Beatrice stepped closer, lowering her voice just enough so only Eliza could hear. I intend to ruin you completely before the day ends. Snow fell quietly around them, softening the world even as Lady Beatrice's words cut through it with cruel precision. Eliza felt the cold settle under her skin, but she forced herself to stand straight. She had faced hunger, grief, humiliation. She could face this too. Lady Beatrice, Eliza said in a calm whisper, I did not come to quarrel, I came to end this. Beatrice tilted her head, amused. End this? My dear Mrs. Moore, this is hardly in your power to end. Lady Helena shifted beside her daughter, folding her gloved hands. You should be grateful we even grant you this audience. Eliza ignored the sting in her words and took a breath. I came to speak with Lady Beatrice alone. There will be no alone, Beatrice answered. I have nothing to hide. Eliza steadied her voice. Very well, then hear me as you are. I do not wish to disrupt your life. I do not intend to remain in the Duke's. I plan to return home, care for my daughter, and stay far from his affairs. Beatrice raised an eyebrow. A charming speech, but I do not believe a word of it. It is the truth. Truth? Beatrice laughed softly. If you wished to avoid scandal, you would have fled that manor the moment you were discovered in it. Instead, you lingered. You allowed him to feed your child, bring a doctor to your cottage, defend your name. You let him ride through the village like a knight to your rescue. She leaned forward, her voice low and sharp. Men do not behave that way toward women they consider insignificant. Eliza's heart twisted, but she held her ground. Whatever he feels, or thinks he feels, is his own burden. I do not intend to encourage it. You already have, Beatrice said. Eliza's hands tightened around her cloak. Lady Beatrice, you misunderstand everything. I am not your rival. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. No? Then tell me plainly. Do you love him? The question struck hard, unexpected, unfair, too direct for the quiet street they stood upon. Eliza's breath caught. She opened her lips, but no sound came. Lady Helena scoffed. You see, even her silence betrays her ambitions. Eliza forced herself to meet Beatrice's gaze. My feelings are irrelevant. He is a duke. I am a widow with nothing but a frail child and a pile of debts. Whatever kindness he has shown is temporary and dangerous. I came to end it. Beatrice's cold expression wavered a fraction, though pride kept it sharp. You expect me to believe you will simply walk away? Yes, Eliza said. I will leave the manor and accept nothing further from him. No food, no coin, no protection. Lady Helena frowned. No protection? Even though the village now whispers your name with contempt? Even though your child may face ridicule? Eliza swallowed. I will manage. Beatrice searched her face, truly looked at her, for the first time. The wind lifted a strand of Eliza's hair, revealing the exhaustion etched in her eyes. The fear she fought so fiercely to hide. Something in Beatrice's gaze shifted, a flicker of doubt, or perhaps the faintest awareness of Eliza's sincerity. You mean to disappear? Beatrice murmured. Yes, Eliza said softly. Not for you, for Clara. Beatrice's expression faltered, just for a breath. Then she looked away, fighting the crack in her composure. She had expected a battle. She had not expected surrender. The parson's wife, who had been standing quietly at the edge of the path, spoke then in a gentle voice. Lady Beatrice, perhaps Mrs. Moore tells the truth. She seems no threat to you. Beatrice stiffened. That is not for you to decide. Nor is it for you to destroy her, the parson's wife said kindly. Not when she offers to walk away with dignity. Beatrice closed her eyes briefly, gathering herself. When she opened them, she looked directly at Eliza. You will leave him, she said slowly. Completely. Without hope of return. Eliza nodded. Completely. And you will not seek his aid again, Beatrice pressed. I will not. Beatrice studied her a long moment, then finally stepped back. The frost melted from her voice, though pride still held its edges. Then this matter ends here. I will speak no further of you in the village. Eliza exhaled, relief and sorrow twisting together. Thank you. Lady Helena looked displeased but said nothing more. She tugged at her daughter's sleeve. Come, Beatrice, we have lingered enough. Beatrice hesitated. Her expression softened in spite of herself. Mrs. Moore, though I despised your presence at the manor, I see now that your intentions are not malicious. I only wish... She stopped. Pride forbade the rest. Eliza finished for her quietly. You only wish your life had not been disturbed. Beatrice's lips tightened. Yes, Eliza bowed her head. Then I will disturb it no longer. Beatrice turned away, her cloak swirling behind her as she and her mother moved down the lane. The parson's wife offered Eliza a gentle nod before following them inside. When they were gone, Eliza stood alone in the snow. The silence pressed around her, heavy, final, a strange mixture of triumph and despair. She had achieved what she came for. She had ended the rumor. She had given Henry's world back to him. And now she had to let him go. She walked slowly toward the manor, each step heavier than the last. Her boots sank into the soft snow, leaving a fragile trail behind her. She did not look back. She could not. By the time she reached the manor gates, the wind had grown colder. Lanterns glowed faintly along the path, and the windows of the grand house flickered with warm firelight. It looked magnificent, untouchable. A world she had briefly stepped into, only to step back out of forever. Henry waited near the entrance, His shoulders were tense, his eyes shadowed with worry. When he saw her, he stepped forward at once. "Eliza," he said urgently. "Are you hurt? Did she speak to you harshly?" "Harshly, yes," Eliza whispered, "but I am not hurt." "What did she say?" Henry asked, searching her face. "Tell me everything." Eliza drew a slow breath. "I told her the truth." He frowned. "What truth?" "That I will not remain in your life." Henry stared at her as if she had struck him. "Eliza, I will return home after this," she continued softly. "Clara needs peace. Not rumors, not scandal, not the weight of a duke's world crushing her future." Henry shook his head. "No, this is madness." "It is mercy," she said, "for both of us." "Do you think I want mercy?" he asked. "I want you safe. I want—" She cut him off gently. "Henry, please, do not make this harder." He turned away, running a hand over his face as if trying to hold himself together. "I cannot accept this." "You must," she said. He turned back to her, voice breaking. "Eliza, do you truly believe I care so little that I will let you walk away while you are still suffering?" "We all suffer," she whispered, "but some suffering is chosen so others may be spared." Henry looked at her long and deeply. In that gaze, she saw everything he had not said. Regret, frustration, affection too powerful to disguise. She stepped closer. "You have done enough for me, for Clara, for my husband's memory. Let this be the end." Henry's throat tightened. "And what becomes of us?" Eliza smiled sadly. "There was never an us. Not truly." Henry took one final step toward her, close enough that she felt the warmth of him through the cold air. "You do not believe that?" Eliza's voice cracked. "I must." The wind carried their silence like a fragile ribbon through the snow. After a long, aching moment, Henry exhaled and lowered his eyes. "If this is what you choose, I will not stand in your way." Eliza nodded, tears burning, but not falling. "Thank you." He looked up at her again, eyes soft and wounded. "But hear me, Eliza. If ever you need me, if Clara ever needs anything, you may come to this manor without fear. No rumor, no title, no expectation will close its doors to you." She nodded again, unable to speak. Together they walked the rest of the path in silence. He escorted her as far as the gate, stopping before he crossed the threshold that separated his world from hers. "Goodbye, Eliza," he said quietly. "Goodbye, Henry." She turned and walked into the snow. She did not look back until she felt the weight in her chest shift. When she finally did look, he still stood at the gate, watching her, not as a duke, not as a benefactor, as a man. She gave him one last, small nod. Then she walked away, toward her cottage, toward Clara, toward the quiet life she hoped would heal in time. Henry remained at the gate long after her figure vanished into the snowfall. And as the evening settled around Blackwood Manor, both understood that something had ended between them, quietly, painfully, and without the storm they had feared. Yet neither knew that endings sometimes carry the first fragile threads of beginnings. Snow melted slowly from the village roofs as spring crept over the land, softening the harsh edges winter had carved. Eliza Moore watched the thaw with quiet relief, knowing Clara's cough had finally faded and that the cruelest months were behind them. She spent her days mending clothes for neighboring families and helping the children at the small schoolroom the manor had reopened. Henry had insisted on rebuilding it for the village, though she kept her distance from him, honoring the promise she had made to Lady Beatrice and to herself. Weeks had passed without a single word exchanged between them. She heard of him only through hushed conversations in the market. The Duke had reformed estate wages, ensured fair distribution of food, dismissed the corrupt steward, and hosted meetings to repair relationships long neglected. The village grew warmer toward him, though a few whispers clung to older suspicions. Eliza tried not to think of him. She tried to bury the memory of his voice, the warmth of his hands, the way he had said her name. But some memories refused burial. They surfaced at the quietest moments, when she stirred a pot, when she brushed Clara's hair, when she stepped outside and saw Blackwood Manor in the distance, like a distant star she had once been foolish enough to reach for. Clara had recovered fully and spent each afternoon playing near the schoolroom. She asked about the Duke often. "Will he visit us again, Mama?" "No, sweetheart. Eliza would answer softly. He has many duties. But he said he would always come if we needed something. Eliza would smile faintly. We must learn not to need anyone. Clara didn't understand, and Eliza never explained. One mild afternoon, as clouds drifted lazily across the sky, Eliza finished a lesson with the children and stepped outside, ready to take Clara home. She found her near the fence speaking with someone, a tall figure bent slightly, listening. Eliza's breath caught. Henry. Clara beamed when she saw her mother. "Mama, look who came to visit!" Eliza steadied herself. She had prepared for this moment in countless ways, yet none seemed to help now. She walked toward them with careful steps. Henry straightened. "Good afternoon, Eliza." She hesitated. "Your Grace." He smiled faintly, a touch of sadness and something warmer beneath it. "I had hoped you would call me Henry again." She clasped her hands together. "I should not, but you once did," he said softly. She looked away, unable to hold his gaze. "That was a mistake. One of many." Clara tugged at Henry's sleeve. "You came to see us, didn't you?" Henry knelt beside her. "Indeed I did. I wanted to know how you've been." "Much better," Clara said happily. "Mama says we don't need any more help." Henry's eyes lifted to Eliza with quiet pain. "Does she?" Eliza felt her throat tighten. "You have already done more than we could ever repay. And yet," he murmured, standing. "I did not come for repayment." Eliza swallowed and forced a calm smile. "We are grateful for your kindness, truly, but it is time for us to carry our own lives." Henry nodded slowly. "I see." He paused, searching her face. "Then may I walk with you?" "Only as a friend." Eliza hesitated. A simple walk. It sounded harmless, yet her heart knew better. Still, Clara looked so hopeful, and refusing outright felt unnecessarily cruel. "Very well," she said softly. A short walk. They walked together toward the small footpath leading to the village stream. Clara ran ahead, leaving the adults in a quiet rhythm of steps and unspoken thoughts. Henry broke the silence first. "I have thought of you every day." Eliza stopped walking. "Please do not say that." "I must," he said. "It is the truth." She closed her eyes briefly. "And what good can the truth do? You know we live in two different worlds." "We do," he agreed. "But those worlds touch. They touched the night I saw Clara watching my plate, and they have touched every day since." Eliza shook her head. "The village has accepted you again. Do not destroy that by associating with me." "I am not concerned with the village," he said. "But you should be." Henry stepped closer. "Eliza, I care more for you and Clara than for any rumor spoken in a marketplace." Her breath trembled. "Why? Why would you care for us at all?" He spoke with gentle certainty. "Because you showed me a life outside duty, a life built on strength, love, and honesty. You made me see what I had ignored for too long, and when I tried to protect you, you protected me instead." She turned away, unable to bear the tenderness in his voice. Henry walked around her until she was forced to meet his eyes. "You said once that we did not belong together," he said quietly. "Tell me now, do you still believe it?" "Yes," she whispered. "Because it is true." He nodded slowly. "Then I must ask you something difficult." She looked up warily. "Do you not care for me at all, Eliza?" She froze. Words she had buried clawed their way to the surface. She took a step back. "My feelings are irrelevant," she said. "Not to me." "They must be." Henry closed the small distance between them. "Eliza, if you tell me honestly that there is nothing in your heart, nothing at all, I will walk away this instant, and I will never trouble your peace again." She stared at him, breathless. The world seemed to shrink until nothing remained but his eyes and her racing heartbeat. "Say it," he whispered. "If it is true." She tried. She opened her mouth. She shaped the lie in her mind, but no sound came. Henry exhaled, a faint, shaking breath. "Then it is not true." Eliza turned away, her voice trembling. "I cannot stand between you and your future." "You are my future," he said softly. She looked back, startled. "You must not say such things." "I must," he said. "I came here today for one purpose, to ask you something I should have asked long ago." She shook her head, stepping back. "Henry, please, do not—" But he followed gently, his voice soft but unwavering. "Will you allow me to court you?" Her hand flew to her mouth. "You cannot. I cannot accept." "You can," he said. "And I hope you will. Your world will not accept me. Then my world will change." "No," she whispered, shaking her head. "Do not say that. A duke must uphold tradition. A duke must uphold justice," he said, "and love, and the courage to choose what is right." She felt tears sting her eyes. "And what if choosing me is wrong?" "Then I accept the consequences," he murmured. "Every one of them." Clara called from ahead, interrupting them. "Mama, Henry, come see the water." Henry reached for Eliza's hand, not with boldness, but with the softness of a man asking permission. She looked at his hand, trembling. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. They walked to the stream together. Clara threw stones into the gentle water, laughing as ripples spread across the surface. Henry watched her with affection, his thumb brushing the back of Eliza's hand, as though memorizing the feel of it. After a quiet moment, Henry spoke again. "Eliza, your fears are not unfounded. Society will speak. Some will judge. Some may never approve." She nodded. "Then why pursue what will bring you such trouble?" "Because trouble without you feels empty," he said. "But trouble with you feels like purpose." Eliza covered her mouth, tears falling freely now. Henry stepped closer. "I am not offering charity. I am offering partnership, respect, a home for Clara, a life where you stand beside me, not behind." She looked up at him, unable to speak. "And yes," Henry added softly, voice breaking into a smile, "I am offering love." Eliza's breath hitched. "Henry," he took both her hands in his, "if you can look at me and tell me you feel nothing, I will accept it. But if you feel even a fraction of what I feel, then give me the chance to prove that our lives need not be divided." Eliza wiped her tears. "I care for you. More than I should." He smiled gently. "Then let that be enough." "It is not," she whispered. "There is Clara to consider." Henry knelt to the child's height and called softly, "Clara." She turned, her cheeks pink from the cold. "Yes? May I ask you a question?" he said. She nodded eagerly. He glanced at Eliza for permission. She gave a hesitant nod. Henry smiled. "How would you feel if I were to be part of your life, every day, not just as a visitor, but as family?" Clara blinked in surprise. "You mean like a papa?" Eliza's breath caught. Henry extended his hand to Clara. "Only if you wanted that, and only if your mother wished it." Clara ran toward Eliza, tugging her sleeve excitedly. "Mama, I like him. I like him very much." Eliza knelt, pulling Clara into her arms. "Oh, my darling," Clara whispered. "I want us to be safe. With him we are safe." Eliza closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Henry approached slowly. "Eliza, may I ask properly now?" She rose, tears still shining on her cheeks. Henry took her hands again. "Will you allow me the honor of marrying you?" She stared at him, breath trembling, heart racing, the world narrowing to one man, one question, one impossible hope. At last, she whispered, "Yes." Henry exhaled as though he had been holding his breath for weeks. He pulled her gently into his arms, holding her with a tenderness that made the earth steadier beneath her feet. Clara cheered, laughing in delight. Henry stepped back, touching Eliza's face with gentle reverence. "Thank you for trusting me." She smiled through tears. "Thank you for returning to me." He kissed her forehead softly, a promise held in quiet warmth. Within weeks, the village buzzed with whispers once more, but of a different kind. Some marveled at the match, others doubted it, but all watched with curiosity as the Duke and the widow walked through town side by side, their fingers intertwined without shame. The wedding was held in a small chapel warmed by early spring sunlight. No grand orchestra, no ornate display, only sincerity, simple flowers, and the village gathered with cautious hope. Clara stood between them, holding both their hands as Henry vowed to protect and cherish them. Eliza promised to stand beside him, not as a burden or obligation, but as a partner and beloved. When they walked out of the chapel as husband and wife, villagers whispered blessings, children scattered petals, and Clara clapped in joy. Henry leaned close to Eliza as they stepped into the sunlight. "My love," he whispered, "our lives begin anew now." Eliza smiled, her heart full and steady. Yes, and this time we walked together. Henry lifted her hand and pressed a tender kiss to it, eyes shining with quiet devotion. They walked toward Blackwood Manor, no longer separated by rank or fear or rumor, but bound by choice, by courage, and by love that had grown in the coldest season and blossomed into spring. At last Eliza understood that redemption was not a miracle, but a hand extended in the darkness. And she had taken it. Thank you so much for listening to this story all the way to the end. We hope it moved you as much as it moved us while telling it. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave us a comment telling us where you're listening from and what you liked the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What score would you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That really motivates us to keep creating and sharing more stories, full of emotion and life lessons. And before we go, we want to remind you that an exciting and heartwarming story recommendation will appear on the final screen. If you'd like to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you once again for being here, and we'll see you in the next story.